Welcome to Breathe In, Scream Out, a podcast for feeling it all, one breath and scream at a time. I'm Healy, your guide through this sacred mess called life. Here we'll feel everything. We'll cry, we'll laugh, we'll scream, and maybe scream again. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Breathe In, Scream Out. I'm your host, Healy, and today's episode is a very special guest episode with Lindsay Monal, who is a sound artist, a yoga teacher, and a Reiki master. She also happens to be one of my closest, dearest friends, favorite people, and inspirations. Lindsay is such a wealth of knowledge, not only about sound, yoga, Reiki, but also just about business and life in general. She is younger than me and in many ways wiser than me. She's a big inspiration for me in terms of going after what you want with confidence, openness, and a humble heart and mind. She is one of my favorite teachers and my own teacher. How I even got into leading sound baths or integrating sound work into my breath work and Reiki offerings is because of Lindsay. She is one of my favorite Leos. You know, I love my Leos, especially my Leo women, and I'm really excited to share this conversation with you. You are going to learn so much, open up your mind to so much. She has so many amazing insights, points of views, and inspiration, not just in the terms of wellness, but for any entrepreneur. She's really inspiring. She's so open. She's so smart and driven, and I'm really excited for you to hear all she has to share. Before we do that, though, we will start the way we always do, with a grounding sigh, scream, yell, whatever it is you need. I certainly need all the sound release this week myself. So wherever you are, seated, standing, in a quiet, private space, if you can find it. If not, just walking, grounding into your body, your feet. Maybe you close your eyes. Just a few normal breaths, grounding into your body, your seat, your feet, your energy. Maybe this is the first moment you've had today to just spend a moment with you. Together, I'll guide us through 3 rounds of breath. With each inhale and exhale, just using the inhale to fill up with energy, using the exhale to release energy down and out through your feet. Anything you need to release, stress, tension, overthinking, judgment. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Sigh it out through your mouth. Another deep inhale. Sigh out to release. This final round of breath on the exhale, you can scream, sigh, release out into your space, into your hands. Maybe you even take a hum just to reground. Take your biggest breath in yet. Exhale some sound. Whew. Maybe a little flutter of the lips. Come back to your natural breath. Feel your seat, your feet beneath you. Deepen your breath just to consciously bring some energy back into your body. If your eyes are closed, gently just start to flutter them open and enjoy this conversation, this episode with Miss Lindsay Monal. Lindsay Monal, welcome to Breathe In, Scream Out. I am so excited to have you on the pod.
I'm so excited to be here and to just get to hang out. I've been listening to Amy Poehler's podcast a lot, Good Hang, and this feels like that of we're friends who haven't gotten to talk in a while and now we're getting to do it on a podcast. So I'm just I'm envisioning us a couple years from now as the rich, famous celebrities that will be. And
Obviously.
this is our practice
Absolutely
run.
not. Two fire signs, obviously. First question we always start with is, what are you screaming about right now?
Ooh, a spicy one to start. I would say I'm screaming about teachers practicing their practice and like being students. I feel like that's what I'm always screaming about. And there's times in my life where I'm really good about it and times where I'm not so good about it. But I think it's important now more than ever than to like really be walking the walk and taking classes and being a student to pull from that like well of inspiration. So if you're a teacher listening to this, go take a class. You're overdue.
Absolutely. And just even for the fact of all the space teachers have to hold, any teachers, not
Mhm.
just in the wellness space, right? It could be teachers in the literal school system, but all the
Mhm.
space we have to hold just to have that space held for us in any
Mhm.
capacity is a reminder of the dynamic, the power of it, the humbling of it, all of the above.
Love it.
And you are a sound artist, a yoga teacher, a Reiki master. So I am lucky enough to know so much about you, but I would love if you could share with the listeners just a little bit about who you are, what you do, how you have found yourself on this path.
Yeah, where to begin? I think like I was a young, stressed out kid who needed a little bit of regulation. My mom would play like meditation tapes in the car on my way to school, as a way to, and she would do like little yoga nidras with me before bed without like knowing quite what it was. And I think once I was in high school, I got into yoga and kind of it became like everything, like all I wanted to talk about, all I wanted to share about was just feeling so transformed by the practice that it was just like a natural, it's again this feeling of like being a student and being so transformed by the practice that you have it's just overflowing out of you to share. So after college, I did a yoga teacher training, my 200 hour, and just kind of knew that that was like what I needed to do with my life. So I, have been teaching yoga and with along with that, always kind of feeling like I wanted to teach the most relaxing, restorative, like accessible type of practice that I could. So first was interested in restorative yoga, then yin yoga, yoga nidra, and then sound eventually. And I think throughout my years of kind of testing out all the waters of all the different types of practices, I found like yin yoga really and sound and Reiki as well to be some of the most beneficial practices for me. So those have just been the things that I've leaned into. And I feel like really post pandemic, students were coming to me asking about sound more and more. And that's kind of how I got into leading trainings and offering it more. And now it's kind of the main focus. And I feel that it'll be the main focus for a big chunk of my life. Like I feel like I'm kind of done testing of what works and kind of feel like sound is the thing, but maybe 5 years from now you'll ask me and I'll be teaching something completely different, but I like this manifesting generator in me likes to
Mm.
try new things and, experiment and evolve constantly. So for now it's the sound, but yeah, I feel really fortunate to be able to call this my work.
There's so much I want to ask, but I'll start just with going all the way back. You said you found yoga in high school, and we have a little bit of an age gap. So I'm open to the possibility that, what is there, like 7 years between us almost? So I know that was not accessible to me in high school. It wasn't something we were talking about. I went to all girls Catholic school, so maybe that was an added layer, but I'd love just to hear about, you've talked about your mom. We love you, Leslie, and how she, without even knowing, sometimes would expose you to yoga nidra or like the healing hands practice of just like laying your hands on her
Mm.
post work or things like this. But I'd love to hear about what actually, even with the stress and anxiety growing up, how yoga came into the fold and who first, either who or what opened you up to it.
Yeah, I think the first like memories I have of it are like more of a formal yoga practice where my brother and I are 3.5, 4 years apart. So when he was a senior in high school, I was a freshman in high school, and he wanted to like add extracurriculars to his, college resume his senior year. So the one time he joined like the track team, right? And because he was my ride home, I was like, okay, we'll do track. We probably did it for 2 weeks. We quit like pretty immediately. He was on the long distance team and I was on the sprinting team, which if you've ever seen me run, had no business sprinting. But I remember it was like an early spring kind of thing. And a lot of the days it would rain, they would have us just like run inside the school in the gym or just like kind of through the hallways randomly. And one day my coach had like, he was like, all right, we'll do yoga today, and put on like some video DVD thing that we like did. And then like around that same time, actually, yeah, the more that I'm talking about this, I like see a lot of experiences with my brother in this where he had bought like a P90X DVD, like the pack
Mm.
of like P90X, like 90 days to your ultimate body kind of workout thing. And there was a yoga disc on there, and he was like, oh, do you want to try this with me? And I like did it, and the two of us were dead on the floor after 100 chaturanga push-ups, like,
Oh my
but
God.
there was like something like, I don't remember the first experience necessarily, but there was like a couple things around that time when I was, yeah, maybe a freshman, sophomore in high school that I kind of like was dabbling in it. And I remember my mom also like with school, she had gone to like a tricky tray, which I know isn't a thing everywhere in the world, but
Oh,
it's definitely a
it
Jersey
is.
thing.
There's a Jersey. I said, oh, tricky tray. We used
She
to
went
have
to the
one
tricky
every. Oh
tray.
my God, I love a tricky tray. Everyone
Yeah, but
listening to this is going to be like, what
yeah,
the
if
fuck
you're
are they
unfamiliar
talking?
with a turkey tray, it's like basically where like all the moms of like the PTA will like make a basket, and then they'll do like a fundraiser where you'll
Hmm.
like raffle on each other's baskets and like,
Yes.
in order to raise money. And my
Yes.
mom won this kind of like yoga basket at a tricky
Mm.
tray fundraiser that had like a yoga mat, like a cool water bottle, another like DVD yoga thing. So again, it's like this time in high school where there's all these little like, oh, this
Pings.
little thing,
Yes.
pings of yoga. And at some point in that thing, I like started to get interested in it. I remember watching Yoga with Adriene
Hmm.
videos on YouTube. And I would go to, there was a yoga studio. This is the time like Groupon was really a big thing. And I had no money, right? I was like in high school. My
Mm.
only income was from like my bagel store jobs that I worked. And I would like spend my money on Groupon, some yoga studio like intro packs, and tried a little hot yoga and like would be passing out every time. I was like, okay, hot yoga is not for me, but found this little, this,
Never,
no,
never.
not for me.
No.
But I found this yoga studio in Rutherford, New Jersey called Shiva Shanti Yoga Studio, which I don't know if it's still even open, but I remember going to that. And that was kind of my first yoga studio like experience. I remember I had just gotten like my license, and I would like drive my mom's car over, the town over to Rutherford and take the class. I remember leaving those classes just feeling like high on life. You know what I mean? Just like
Mm.
this peacefulness and this like joy that I hadn't experienced in any other way. And I was just like obsessed with it. I would just go like every day if I could. Yeah, and that was like high school. And then I remember in college, I would go every week. There was a yoga class at the gym in college, and there was this funny teacher who was like, this guy, and he was like maybe mid 30s, whatever. And one year on President's Day, he like read us quotes of famous presidents. And it was just like a funny, I don't know, just like funny little things. And one time I had dragged a friend of mine to take the yoga class at the college gym. And
Mm.
I was like really excited to show her yoga. And that day the teacher didn't show up, but there was like maybe 15 people in the room like there for the yoga class. And I had brought my friend too. So I was like embarrassed that there was no teacher there. So I was kind of like, you know what? Like I've been doing this. I didn't know anything, but I knew
Of
enough.
course.
I knew the postures. I like had been to enough yoga classes where I felt like, okay, I kind of know the exercises of it. And so I guided a yoga class, like
Wow.
probably terrible. I'm glad there's no video recording of that. But, it was just like a fun moment. I think that was one of the things where I was like, oh, this like is something that I can share and that I want to share with people. So that was kind of the entryway in. And then yeah, just I guess in my junior year of college, I needed like a marketing internship, and I went on
Mm.
volunteer match and found this yoga company in Brooklyn that did like stuff for seniors and stuff for schools and children. And I like applied to be their marketing intern. And that was kind of like how I got into the business of yoga. And I
Mm.
worked with them for a couple of years. And that's where I did my 200-hour teacher training. The studio doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, that was my intro. Host yoga in Brooklyn, in Greenpoint.
I love that. And
Yeah.
something I love so much about you, Lindsay, is the way you can balance your confidence and humility when you don't know how to do something, right? But that didn't stop you from getting up there and teaching that class
Mm,
in front of a room full of people because that's who showed up. And I think sometimes confidence is so misunderstood, especially with us fire signs. Lindsay is a Leo, I am a Sagittarius. And I think that when people think confidence, sometimes there's also this layered shame, like a layer of shame around arrogance. And there's a fine line, but you
mm,
always approach a situation with so much humility of what you don't know, but also taking all the information you've gathered. And I think doing something like that is half the battle, having the confidence to teach or the trust in yourself, if confidence feels like too
mm.
sticky of a word, the trust in yourself to want to share this thing. I think a lot about so many people, myself included, in moments in my life I haven't done things because I was scared or thought I
Mm,
couldn't do it, and how much we hold ourselves back. And you do not do that. And I love that.
yeah. I do things scared all the time though,
Yeah.
like I do things like shaking in my boots all the time. I'm just like, okay, like I'm here, this is what's in front of me. It's the time. Yeah.
I think that's the only way to do things. And
Mm,
the fear is a ping or an inkling that you actually can or want to do it.
mm-hmm. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And knowing that you also have this background in marketing and content and all of these aspects of like corporate girl Lindsay,
Mm,
I would love to hear a little bit about, even though you had this, all roads lead back to yoga and sound for you and this
mm,
teaching aspect of self. I know you're also like myself from an immigrant family. You probably maybe felt some outside pressure to go that more corporate route, and in a lot of ways I'm sure it's taught you really valuable skills and things that you use still today, like,
mm-hmm.
no one is better at a graphic or a marketing email, or I've paid you to help me with aesthetic is not my thing. It is your thing. But I'd love to hear a little more about that kind of journey back to now where you are fully in your teacher, artist, practitioner bag,
Mm,
and what what kind of led you to do that, if you felt outside pressure like we all do. I think there's a
mm.
lot of misconceptions about what it means to work in these spaces and make a living. I'd love to hear more about your insight or business acumen in that way.
Yeah, I have a degree in marketing. That was like my undergrad degree. Toward the end, I picked up like a double major in environmental sustainability. It was like some weird thing that I
I
was
didn't
like, I
even
can't
know
just do
that.
marketing. Yeah. I was like, I can't do that. Like I need to add something like better for the world in there. So I like
Yes.
double
My
majored, but
Aquarius moon queen.
yeah. I was like, I don't want to work for Coca-Cola. Like I remember saying that. I remember being in college and I remember like we would have these because like in the business school they would have these events for whatever, business, whatever. And I remember some of the companies that they would bring in and I would think to myself, I was like, I never want to work for Coca-Cola. No, if somebody listening to this works for Coca-Cola, no
Bless.
shade.
We
I
love
drink,
you.
I love a Coke. But uh but like I just knew like I needed to do something that had more like purpose,
Mhm.
right? Like I needed to do something that was a little bit more fulfilling. And I was naturally drawn toward marketing. I think the Leo in me, the like art lover in me, that kind
Aesthetic,
of,
creator.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I liked that aspect of business. Business felt like a solid degree to get, you can apply it to like anything. So I went to school for marketing and I remember I also got an internship in my junior year we went on like a field trip with my college to the United Nations and I talked to the woman there and I was like, I would love to like work with you or whatever. So I did an unpaid internship at the UN at the United
Hmm.
Nations Global Compact. And it was such a cool experience to be in that world and like dress up in a suit every day and like march over, across town and be in that like such a prestigious like institution where I felt like change was like everyone was so passionate about changing the world and making things better. And I loved that. And I felt like I personally wanted to do something that where I felt like I had a bigger, like, direct impact with people. Like, I liked the kind of grandeur of the UN and that, like, being a dream job or whatever, and I applied for a job there that I didn't get, and I, like, liked there was a part of me that really, like, saw the world changer piece of things, but I ultimately felt like I was having more fun or enjoying more, like, this yoga, internship that I had where I could directly see the change that I was, like, imparting with people. You
Mm.
know what I mean? Like, see that direct, like, my direct one action had a direct correlation to somebody real right in front of me, and I think I didn't feel that as much in that kind of UN world of things, and I got a couple like corporate jobs out of college and like did that for a while, but yoga was always kind of on the side. Like I was managing yoga studios on the
Mm.
weekends. And yeah, I mean, there was definitely like a little bit of pressure from my parents, or like this idea of, oh, you went to school for marketing, you should get a job in that. And definitely I got like a ton of praise when I did get those like first corporate jobs that I had. And it wasn't until like years later where my mom, when I told her I was like gonna kind of do yoga and like wanted to do that, she was pretty supportive in the moment, like at least to me. But a couple like this year, she was like, when you told me you wanted to be a yoga teacher, I like was so scared, you know. But good for her for not like
Capricorn
talking me
queen,
off.
of
Yeah.
course. Leslie, she's the third
Yeah.
guest in this episode.
Literally, I know. She's
She
gonna
just
listen to this too.
we love you, Leslie.
Yeah, so there was definitely a pressure of like, and I think also just like a societal pressure of
Mhm.
you should go this corporate route, you should have a 401k and benefits, and
Yeah.
you should start investing, and you should have health insurance. There's definitely something that I miss in that, like the security of having like
Of
the
course.
stable job and the stable career. But I think again, I just am feeling more in my purpose than ever
Mm.
before. And I just think like this yoga work, and it allows me to be creative and still use so many aspects of my marketing background. And I think that definitely prepared me to now be like a business owner in the way that I
Mhm.
am. But yeah, I just like at a certain point just like couldn't lie to myself anymore.
Yeah, and I think you also are so gifted at trusting the universe and yourself, and trusting that there's not just one way to do something,
Mhm.
and allowing yourself to try that manifesting generator. Try a thing, like you tried the UN thing. It's not really lighting me up. Following, there's human design, there's astrology, there's all these things. Astrology is a big one for me, and even on this podcast. But the only thing I believe in more than astrology is free will. But
Mm.
you know yourself well enough to know how to follow those pings, as I've been saying, or those inklings, or what's going to keep lighting the spark inside of you, which is also a big part of your astrology too. Your Leo, Sun, and Venus, your Aquarius, like wanting to do something for the greater good, your Taurus, like moving as slow as possible, all those aspects of
Mm.
who you are and what you bring. And I think it's always inspiring for people in these spaces to see people like you actually doing the thing and walking the walk, which leads me to the fact that I think you're just like the ultimate teacher's teacher, because you do show up. Even what you said earlier, like all teachers need to be in class, all teachers need to be
Mhm.
practicing. You take that literally.
Yeah.
I have never met someone who, other than myself, I always like to be in training. I'm in a training now and ready for the next one.
Yeah.
And that can become a cycle and a habit too, right? Of not letting space to integrate. But all the work that you've done to continue to educate yourself, what inspires you to keep going back into trainings or
Mm.
classes or signing up? It's expensive, it's money, it's time, it's
Mm.
energy. But how does that work for you? What is it? Is it a source of inspiration? Is it a source
Mm.
of just like widening your knowledge as a practitioner? What keeps you showing up for those offerings, not just as teacher, but as student?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of everything you said. Like, I think it's partially wanting that inspiration, like wanting to be in like an educational space that keeps me inspired, where I learn something new. I am pretty quick to like integrate, like I feel like I absorb things pretty quickly and I can grasp new concepts pretty easily. So I do like being in classroom settings and learning in that way. And I think the thing that inspires me is just like it's really that idea of like the more that you know, the more that you realize you don't know. And not from a sense of like lack or like unenoughness, because I don't
Mhm.
think it's that. I think it's just like it's just like this like insatiable curiosity where I'm like, "Oh, this thing is that?" And I'm just like, "What else can I like what other points can I collect in that?" So, I think it's more like curiosity that like keeps me going back for more trainings than anything else. Yeah, I'm in a training now and I'm like, I need to finish this one. I'm not allowing myself to sign up for any other even weekend little things until I complete this like
Mhm.
bigger training that I've taken on. I think because I started also teaching at a very young age, like I was 21 when I graduated my yoga teacher training and started teaching. And I think part of that was like the feeling of there was all these other people who were my peers who were 10 years down they were like 10 years ahead of me in terms of teaching experience and maybe 20 years older than me, at
Mm.
the minimum, right? So I think part of coming into the world like very green and very like new, I think at the beginning, the trainings were like almost playing catch up, like wanting to like really understand. Now I think it's more again just this curiosity, but I think there was a time where I was like, okay, like who am I as a 20-year-old to be telling this room of people anything, you know? And it was just
Mm.
like, let me collect these
Mhm.
certifications to like hold up in front of my chest and say, like, I did this thing, you
Yeah.
know? And my relationship to that has shifted, but I think that
Mhm.
was the initial push.
Yeah, we've talked about that too, the certificate chasing. Like, the way people are obsessed with sometimes too obsessed with just getting this thing done instead of actually absorbing and practicing,
Yeah.
practice what you preach, practicing that information, and, I mean, I do think there's some truth to the nothing can educate us more than the lived experience of the thing and
Mhm.
just, like, the hours of being in a training, teaching, just getting all those hours under your belt. I know all my Capricorn sometimes rebels against people, like, not qualified, that brings out my little bit of I'm like, "You need your 10,000 hours," but it's a mix
Yeah.
of it's not either or, one or the other, and, you're one of my teachers too. Any sound offerings I offer because of you, so I'd love to hear more about the sound aspect of your practice, which has arguably become one of the bigger things
Mhm.
that you offer, you're passionate about. When I think sound, I think you. Sound healing, and it's become more popular over the years, so I any shares you have about how you became a sound artist and practitioner and why you think it's so important for people right now.
Yeah. I think it all, again, kind of initiated with yoga, where I was definitely interested in these slower aspects of yoga, wanting to teach yin restorative. And before the pandemic, that was like what I offered. And my classes were good, consistent, not hugely filled out, but like people were interested in it.
Mm,
Post pandemic, I found, and during the pandemic, I really like doubled down on sound as just my own personal practice because I was missing just being in community with people. And I had a really steady meditation practice at the time, like seated mantra chanting meditation. But I was like getting bored of that a bit. And there was something about the sound practice of like playing a bowl that allowed me to get into that like meditative state, but was still like active and still got me in the moment. And
mhm,
I remember I would play for like 5 minutes, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to play for 5 minutes. And then it would turn into like 45 minutes of me playing, like the time just kind of escaped. And so during the pandemic was really the time where I was like in that practice deeply. And when we emerged from it and studios started to open, I remember just like offering it for like 5, 10 minutes at the end of my classes. And people would come up to me after and like be just so excited by it, so lit up by it, and just kind of continued that. I remember I was teaching at a new studio at the time that had kind of just opened. And pre pandemic, I remember the vinyasa classes at any studio would be packed out 20, 30 people in the room, and my yin class would have like 6 people. But post pandemic, I was finding that
Mhm.
like my class was like sold out. And I was like, what shifted around this where people all of a sudden just wanted to slow? I mean, I know it shifted, right? A pandemic, a mass trauma of being
Of
locked
course,
down.
yeah.
But I really just found people were like gravitating to these slower practices more than ever. And the sound was like a big anchor in that and a big like calling card for a lot of people to try it. And I've been sharing this story a lot recently because I think it was like a pivotal moment in my understanding of it. It was a couple years ago, and it was like Mother's Day, and it was rainy, and I remember my uncle was kind of sick, and everyone was like a little doomy and gloomy around the house. You
Mhm.
know, we were at my aunt's house, and I was like, "Oh, I have my bowls in the car. Like, should I get them?" And my family's like, "Yeah, we'd try it." So we like sat around. It was like my grandma, my aunts, my little 15-year-old cousin, my uncle, and we like laid around in the living room, and I started to play the bowls. And first of all, I remember just like crying, like I had no words to even say to
Mhm.
my family in that moment. But I remember after, my grandma, who doesn't speak any English, she like explained how she felt from it. And what I think stood out to me was just this fact that like sound can transcend like language barriers in a way that like
Mhm.
it didn't matter that I like didn't really guide any meditation. It didn't matter that like they had no context or previous experience or physical mobility, or like there was like no barrier to giving them the experience of feeling that meditative state, which
Mm.
can arise also from holding a headstand or can arise from a breathwork practice, right? But like this just felt like the like silver bullet, like easy way in for people. And so I think that was a moment for me that like really turned things on, where I thought, wow, like this, you know, is the way to like give people that experience without much in the way. So I think that's kind of the thing that like drove me into it. And then because I had already experience with like leading meditation teacher trainings, I created my own like sound training, and that like took off, and I led so many of them like back to back because people were so hungry to learn it. And you know, there's a piece of me that like hopes that people will continue to learn, because those weekend trainings I don't think could ever give you all that you need for it. But I do think, and my like kind of feeling as a teacher and like as a teacher trainer, is that I know that I have a limited capacity. Like I know that I am not able to physically lead every single sound bath in the tri-state area, right? Or the world. And so in training people and in giving them like the tools to be able to facilitate it, I know that they'll touch their families and their
Mhm.
communities and their workplaces in a way that I wouldn't have access to, or the people, you know, people in whoever's workplace aren't going to reach out to me for sound. They're going to go, oh, like Carol in accounting did a sound training. Do you want to try it? You know what I mean? I think there's something that I feel like is my duty to like give
Yeah.
this away and give it to as many people as possible. And I think like it really is so beneficial that that's like the way we start to shift and change the world.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And this idea of being precious of the practice, but not in the sharing of it. And
Mm.
I think so many people, I certainly have bought into this narrative before, like, with this podcast. Why would another white woman with a podcast or another Reiki practitioner, another this, another that. And ultimately, I never usually let that stop me from doing something because manifestor fire sign. But so many people do stop themselves from taking those sparks of inspiration or curiosity and then to a teacher training or a new skill or a new hobby and turning it in. Not that everything we do needs to be turned into a career path, right?
Mm.
But I think so many people actually stop themselves from going after what they want, whether it's a job, a relationship, a habit, a way of living, because they think it's already so saturated. There's already so
Mm.
many people, and they make that the reason not to do it. And I think it's really important for people to hear that it's not, again, very Aquarian of you. It's not us against each other. It's like, it's all for us to share.
Mm.
there's space for everyone to do it because you've taught me a sound bath isn't just the bowls or the chimes or the gong and all the beautiful instruments that you hear. It's what's happening outside of the room. It's what's the cough, the sneeze, the snore, the mallet hitting the bowl in the wrong way. It's the whole experience of it. We always want to think it's just the things that make us feel relaxed and good, but it's the whole encompassing of the experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's also such a beautiful, and I like that you brought up like the cough, the sneeze, and the mistakes that happen, because I think it's also such a beautiful practice of like really accepting like what the world is and what the kind of imperfection of any given moment. There's like positive things that come up
Mm.
in a sound meditation, and also like negative things that can come up too, or kind of like a
Mhm.
breaking up or like a shaking up of energy that, again, I think sound does it in a way that's like really somatic, right? It's really like it gets into like the nooks and crannies of the things that you've like hidden away, and just allows it to move without much intervention, without needing to talk about it or explain it. It's just like
Mhm.
there's that thing that bubbled up to the surface, and you can just let it wash away, and you don't have to like dig through it and make sense of it. It's just like here and being present and feeling and listening into your body and whatever comes up for you. So yeah, I find it just really powerful practice, like no other thing that I've experienced to this point.
Mm. And it is even it's in the music, it's in the words that we hear, it's
Mhm.
in the but in our surroundings. We take all of those little examples of sound for granted, like the rustling
Mm.
of the leaves or the way like you hear the breeze or you hear the water. It can be
Mhm.
so uncomplicated in that way. It doesn't have to
Mm.
just be sitting with these beautiful, expensive
Yeah.
instruments. It can be as simple as listening to your breath or your heartbeat or nature outside of you. And I'd love not to put you on the spot, but what's a fact that you love to share with people about how important or powerful sound healing, a sound practice can be in their everyday lives for our whether it's from a scientific perspective, a body perspective.
Yeah, I guess the first fact that just like popped into my mind is from this book called The Humming Effect, which is a really great book. I think like good for all people curious about this, but I believe it's Jonathan Goldman who wrote the book, but I could be wrong on that. And they talk about how when you hum, it starts to release like nitric oxide in your body, which helps to reduce inflammation and like put your body into that more restorative, like parasympathetic rest and digest state. And I know we've talked about this before, and this feeling of like your own vibration being your own best medicine. And
Mm,
so I think, again, to your point, you don't need the most expensive bowls or the most profound sound meditation. Like, really, you have access to it, to vibration, to sound at any given moment. Even as we're sitting here, it's like windy outside, and I can hear the wind rustling through the trees. And like, there's always an opportunity to listen. And I think that brings so much presence into your life as well. And back to this thing of the nitric oxide, like you're your own healer in that way, right? I, as the practitioner, am not healing anything or changing anything. I'm just creating an environment where you get to like listen and be with the sensation. And in that way, you become your own kind of empowered transformer in that way.
mhm. And I think that's so important for teachers or new teachers, anyone in any profession that's guiding people through something. There's a big misconception even about Reiki, right? That we're doing something to people.
Hmm.
That it's and it can feel mystical and magical and deeply spiritual, and it is. But this idea that the teacher or the person at the front of the room or leading the session is actually doing something when really you're just the vessel and the channel. And when you're a yoga
Hmm.
teacher, it's the same. You create the playlist, the sequence. When you're a sound healer, breathwork teacher, you create all these things, but you're more creating like the environment and the space for people to actually experience their own medicine or whatever it is
Hmm.
they need. When people come up to me and say, "This was amazing. You're amazing." I'm like, "I just make the playlist." It's
Yeah.
and in a certain aspect, not to downplay what we do, it is a great responsibility. a big responsibility, but it is important for people to remember, like, as much as they can take the ego part of it out. You know, when you
Mhm.
have a vision of how it's gonna go and then it's going very differently, part of that's the biggest part of it, maybe the most important part of it, of letting it unfold how it's meant to, not how you
Yeah.
think it's going to be.
Yeah, and I think also there's such a big like this past weekend I led a yin yoga teacher training with our friend Magda. If you're
Shout
listening.
out
Uh,
Magda.
but in that I got to take her class over the weekend, and there's something so beautiful about having space held for you and like the accountability of being in a room where somebody else is in control for a while. I've talked with somebody else about this, about like as a teacher, you're like the adult in the room, right? Like you create the environment where like then the kids can play, right? And they're in this kind of like safe moment where there's somebody who's like watching the time and making the playlist and making the sequence, and like somebody who prepared the thing for you, and you just get to like be there and receive. And in
Mhm,
that there's such a yeah, just like such a beauty of the way that you can practice, I think is so deep. Of course, I'm a huge proponent of like self practice and being home by yourself and doing it, but being led through a class really, I think, gives you the ability to like fully let go and fully trust and not have to be worried about the time that's passing or like the dirty dishes in your sink or whatever other things that are happening. Like you have somebody who's like cared for you and guided and is holding that moment for you. So I think that experience can't really be replicated in
mhm,
like home practice or just through talking about it or just through teaching. Like you really have to go and like feel the thing that your students are feeling.
mm. And I think one thing I love so much about your trainings is how experiential they are, and you actually it's not just about the learning. There's lots of different ways to learn and absorb information. For me, I you can make me read it, listen to it, look at it, talk about it until I'm doing it in my own body, whether
Mhm.
it's acting or facilitating, whatever it is, I'm not really absorbing it fully. That's how I learn. And something and people might say, of course, like in a yoga or sound training, you must experience, but you'd be surprised how often it's just people talking at you. And even with the Bowl Club that you've become a part of, and you started as a student and now you're co-facilitator, all the opportunities that they have to both learn and practice. Lindsay's a co-facilitator of this group called Bowl Club. I'll let her talk more about it. But I'd love to hear about how that structure of all this, I think when we talk about teaching and training and leading and taking, we all have ideas of what that looks like, but how the experiential part of it is just unmatched.
Yeah, like you said, I met Jackie Cantwell, who's my dear friend. It was around the time where I started leading my own trainings and felt like, okay, if I'm leading trainings, I need to like know more. I need to step up my
Yeah.
game a little bit. And Jackie had started this group called Bowl Club, which is like an online sound practitioner training. And I joined it the first round of it as a student and really quickly like loved it and wanted to continue that learning. And so in the second round, we did a little trade where I taught like a section on trauma informed facilitation in exchange to be in it again. And that kind of just kept happening where she would run these groups and I would just come back and like be a student in it again. And I would
Mhm.
lead my one lecture, but I would just was there to just like learn and absorb. And then once I kind of transitioned out of my most recent corporate thing, I was like, okay, I wanted to continue. So I had like an intro to sound weekend training that I would lead, and I wanted to like upgrade that to maybe having some like a level 2 type of training. But I knew that I wanted to do Bowl Club. Like I liked what that was. And I was like, I don't want to, not that it would be competing, but like I didn't want to build another thing. Like I wanted to
Mhm.
just do that thing. So I reached out to Jackie and we like formed a little alliance, and now we co-facilitated together, which is so, so fun. I think when you're a solopreneur or whatever, like it's hard to get motivated. And I definitely am
Mm.
a social person and I work well with other people and I like to work with other people. And so I think for both of us, it gave us that like connection point and that accountability to have somebody else like in it with us that it wasn't this whole business running on one person's shoulders, but instead it was kind of like something that we could collaborate on. And then to answer your question, like around the experiential part of it, so Bowl Club's online. We do some online sound meditations as part of it. And part of the reason we did it online is so that we can access people who aren't
Hmm.
just like in New York City. Like we have students who have been in LA and, all over. So that's been a really cool piece of it. And there is a fair amount of lecture. Like there's lecture is a big
Of
part of
course.
it, but at the end of the training, we have a thing called finals, which is like our favorite part of it, where everyone gets to lead a sound meditation for the rest of the group. And it's really beautiful to see how people who have gone through the same exact training and had the same classes each show up and like share their piece of it in such a unique and beautiful way, whether it's through integrating poetry or like singing and sharing songs or the different
Mm.
instruments that they choose to bring in. And I think because sound is such a kind of like it's a more popular practice, like it's gaining popularity, but it's still very like niche and there's not
Hmm.
that there it's popping up more and more for sure, but I think there's something again also really inspiring around getting to go to another sound practitioner's class and getting that inspiration of what
Hmm.
they're offering and what they're sharing and just being in community with other facilitators. I was talking to a mentee of mine and she was asking about like how do you get booked for things? And so many of the bookings and opportunities that I've had have been through knowing other
Hmm.
practitioners and them being like, "Oh, I got this gig on Saturday, but like I can't do it. Can somebody take it?" Like that, or like directly reaching
Yeah.
out to me about it. And I think again, and this is I think a really big tenet of like the Bowl Club philosophy that we've tried to cultivate, where it's like we're not in competition with one another. I think a lot of the times as yoga teachers or healers in some way, you see like the teacher, the person next to you doing this big thing, and it's really easy to go into that kind of competitive mindset of like, if they got booked for this thing, that means there's less room for me. And I really try to like flip that paradigm and think about just like a rising tide lifts all ships and like, or all
Yeah.
boats or whatever it is. Like, we all, like, by you growing and expanding that creates more desire for it and more abundance and more like space for it in the world. So, really just coming back to that feeling of like, we're not in competition. People feeling sound or practicing yoga or doing breath work is good for all of us.
Everyone.
And the more that you know people and the more that you're in community with other facilitators and healers and teachers, the more opportunities come from that because you know each other and you trade contexts and you collaborate on opportunities. So yeah, I think meet some other people in your world.
Absolutely. I can't think of a single job that I've had in my life that I didn't get because of someone I knew, not because nepotism, but because I think both you and I understand that importance of community. I think sometimes coming from the acting world, I definitely can fall into that. Actually, no, I'm going to give myself a little bit more credit. It was really instilled in us that there's no one who has your voice or your
Mm,
perspective. And that just isn't in art or wellness, it's in every aspect of the world.
mhm,
And Catholic, all girls Catholic school, and people make comments about the cattiness, the competitive. I just was lucky enough to be raised in environments where competition wasn't on the table. That doesn't mean I don't have feelings of jealousy or competition when someone gets something that I want or
mm,
didn't even know I wanted, but it's 10 times, I would say 9.9 times out of 10, it's never that competitive point of view or that separation between me and someone else, me and another breathwork teacher, you and another sound artist is never going to get us anywhere. And you find out through collaborating, like you're doing with Jackie, you find out what your strengths are, where you need to work on, what you want nothing to do with, what aspect of like business or,
mhm,
how to balance. You and I have worked together and we got to do that with each other the way I work with Bree, the way you work with Jackie, or any of the other teachers you collaborate with. You learn so much through collaboration.
mhm,
And another unfortunate side effect of the pandemic is all this social anxiety that it caused, rightfully so, and all this fear of other and suspicion of other people. And I just can't help but think, not to make it so simple, that the more we concern ourselves with community and the greater good,
Mhm.
taking care of ourselves first. But this idea of how important community is and has been since the dawn of time, how
Yeah.
badly we need each other to not just learn and grow, but to feel supported and seen and held, and just all the aspects of relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, and, like, truly believing in this, like, feeling of reciprocity and, like, giving
Mhm.
things away and knowing that you'll be taken care of in the future, and, like, really trusting that and really believing it. And I will say I'm not a perfect person where there definitely are moments where I feel jealousy or envy over
Yeah.
somebody else's accomplishments or things, but it's just returning to that, like, it'll be my time, like, cheering for somebody else until it's my turn, Like, that's a big part of my own practice as well.
Absolutely. So many misconceptions about people in the wellness space and all the bullshit that can, like the niceties that can come in this space too, and the surface level. But we're just humans. We're trying to figure it out. We just are crazy enough to think that we want to work in these spaces and hold. And I also just would love, I'm always so inspired by the way you show up in business. I am a chaos queen, and I blame my astrology. I'm more grounded than people realize, but
Yeah.
I'm like strategy. Brr, brr. I took the strengths assessment recently, and there were 40 strengths, and my first one was woo, not like witchy, but wooing people, and
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
the last 2 were strategy and analysis.
Mm,
So, I'm always so inspired, and if everything Lindsay offers, Bowl Club starting again in February, her Instagram, her website will be in the show notes if you don't already follow her, which you should. But I'm always just so inspired by, it is a gift how you can brand yourself, how you've done it for other
mm,
people, the way you integrate your Instagram, your newsletter, and it's something I resist in a
mm,
rebellious way that is detrimental to me. And I would just love to, for the inspiring business owner or
mm,
solopreneur, entrepreneur, whether it's wellness or not, I'd love for you just to share a little bit of knowledge that you feel comfortable sharing, or some insight of how you approach it, and like how
mm,
you, I know you go through your own waves with it, but you do, it seems so seamless, and
mm.
I know it's also something you enjoy. So any insights, tidbits, important shares you feel like people could benefit from?
Well, first, thank you. You've given me so many compliments this whole this whole
I know,
time, and I
listen,
feel
I know my
feels so
Leos.
good.
I know my Leos, and you're a Leo Venus, praise kink. I'm giving it
Yeah.
over here.
So, yes, but I think a useful thing is to establish, like, brand guidelines for yourself and to really start to understand yourself as, like, a brand. We're in this
Mhm.
world where, especially if you are an entrepreneur or yoga teacher, whatever, like, there you have to kind of exist online in some way, right? You have to, like, show up, and
Yeah.
so I think having a well-defined set of brand guidelines is a good place to start, and even if in a couple years you wanna change that, that's fine, but I think that, like, sticking with a set of colors that works for you, sticking with, like, understanding and really taking time to understand what your values are and what your voice is and what you bring to the table, I think is so important. And having those kind of parameters, like, written out and set, like, it's this idea of, like, creativity can blossom when there's, like, rules in place, right? You
Mhm.
need some type of, like, structure where it's like, "Okay, my colors are this, and this is my point of view, and this is what I value, and this is what I talk about as a teacher or facilitator." And in that container that you create for yourself, there's so much opportunity for creativity because now you don't have every option in the world to,
Mhm.
like kind of calling you in every direction. You've like narrowed your focus a bit and that helps you kind of stay on track. So I would encourage you, definitely it helps to work with somebody who has some branding. Like if you can afford to have a logo made and have like brand guidelines set with a designer, I think that can be really useful because I know for myself, it's hard to like to narrow it down because I like everything. I like all the colors and I like all the aesthetics. And
And
like
they
on
all
one
look
day
good
I
on
feel,
you.
yeah. And on one day I like this and another day I like that. And so sometimes I think having somebody else to mirror back at you, like your blind spots and like what they see from you and your brand and your voice, I think can be really useful. And shout out to Bree, who obviously is your biggest collaborator and my great friend. She helped
Yeah.
make my website and my brand guidelines when I was doing like a refresh of it all last year. And yeah, I think having those like parameters in place really help you to like be creative within some type of boundary and not feel like you're starting from scratch every time you go to make a post on Instagram.
Mm. Money can be now more than ever such a tricky thing. And whether it's our personal money trauma, our collective money trauma that we're all going through. I just had a practitioner say that to me yesterday. The other day, I was in a session receiving, and I said something about money and my relationship to it. She's like, it's also collective. We're all learning right now.
Mm,
But also, I think another just touch back to community. I mean, you don't have to do it all.
mm,
There's there's a lot of us that are good at many things like you, and then I am the first one, the humbleness to know what your gifts are not, and mine is not
mhm.
aesthetic. And if I led that workshop for Meta, Instagram, Facebook, and I was doing the presentation and it looked like shit. And I said, Lindsay, pay you, fix it. I'm
Yeah.
paying you, fix it for me. So not only are you one of my greatest, dearest friends and my favorite teachers, but you have that gift too. And knowing also, I think this entrepreneur, teacher, multifaceted practitioner path, you need to know what you could do yourself and when it's time to
Mhm.
outsource, ask for help, connect for inspiration, collaborate so that you can open yourself up to a new set of people. You know, when you
Mhm.
collaborate with someone else, there's a whole group of people that go to their workshops or classes or offerings that are going to be introduced to
Yeah.
you. So I think it's so helpful to know, not just in a humble way, but you don't have to do everything. You don't
Mhm.
have to do every aspect of it at first. You can, and we've talked about this before, like, and we've done it for each other. Like, exchange sometimes is not just monetary, it's
Mhm.
service based too. So don't be afraid to ask the person you want to collaborate with, offer them a service instead. And if they say no, they say no. I think you're like the
Yeah.
best one of the best inspirations for me. You ask for what you want and you
Yeah.
go after what you want, and they say no. They say no, that's the worst
Yeah.
thing that happens.
Yeah, true. And also, like, most of the time people say yes. Like, it really is that, like,
Yeah,
exposure therapy or whatever, like, rejection therapy that, is, like, popular
yeah.
now. This feeling of just, like, the worst thing that can happen is they say no or they don't respond to your email or whatever. But most of the time, I'd say, like, anytime I've tried to, like, barter with somebody or ask for advice or whatever, people
Yeah.
are much more generous than I think sometimes we give them credit for. And also, like, I think sometimes we are so caught up in our own ego and our own like self
Mm.
view of the world where we think everybody is thinking about us all the time in the way that we're thinking about ourselves all the time. And it's like not true. And I think sometimes we might have the tendency, or people, one, myself included, right, might have the tendency to like wait until we're asked for the thing or wait until
Mm.
somebody sees us and picks us out of obscurity to do whatever thing. And I really think a lot of the times it's just like, if you just like put yourself out there, if you ask the question, you send the email, you apply for the thing,
Mm.
like that also, I think about the energy behind that from like a consciousness perspective, like you taking the action of like, I'm going to email Katie and ask her to be my breathwork mentor, whatever it is, right? Like that energy has like a ripple effect. Even if Katie says no to you, like you have now told the universe or God or whatever you believe in, like, I am serious about this thing. I am already starting to take action toward this thing. And it just makes you more magnetic to other opportunities and times to shine.
Absolutely. And I would guarantee any teacher, practitioner, mentor, anyone you work with in a space that you love and think is incredible at what they do had someone who was their mentor, who
Hmm.
gave them that lunch opportunity, who let them, take them out to lunch, who let
Yeah.
them train under them, who will be gracious, even if it's not an exact yes to what you're asking. It's usually,
Mhm.
like you said, never a no. People are going to work with
Yeah.
you in whatever way that they can. Or if they can't do it, well, the good people, the best ones, will recommend you to someone who they think is even a better fit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's
Mhm.
just like ask and you shall receive kind of energy, right? Of just like go ask, go show. Also just like showing up. Like there's something really just
Mhm.
powerful about like, if you admire a teacher or somebody, go to their class. Like go be a regular in their class. Stick around 5 minutes after their workshop and ask them a question. And like those kind of relationships happen organically, and I think that you have to be okay with being like alone at the table every once in a while
Yeah.
where you like put your I've definitely gone to so many events and things where I knew nobody, and I would just go and be like afraid to go in when I'm like, all right, this is, I bought a ticket for this workshop or for this thing, and I'm gonna go and I'll meet people in there, and sometimes we hit it off and sometimes I go and I just go right home right after. But it's like those, you just have to try and see what's out there.
Lately, I've been saying a lot that, and I've said it on here too, discomfort isn't always a sign that something's wrong. It's usually just a sign that we're trying something new.
Hmm.
And comfort is certainly more important than ever in a world that feels so disruptive. But I do, not to be a boomer, but I do think there's a certain aspect of, in order to grow, you need to get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That sometimes our comfort zone is the most dangerous place to be when we're trying to evolve
Yeah.
or grow or change. So, yeah, getting
Yeah.
uncomfortable, if it's in the spirit of what you really want. If there's something
Hmm.
you really really want, you're going to have to get a little uncomfortable, stir shit up a little bit.
Yeah.
My favorite thing to
Yeah.
do.
This has been so fresh on my mind recently too. Like last night, I did some journaling exercise at an event I was part of, and one of the questions was like, "What would you name this season of your life?" And it had me thinking about this. Like earlier in the summer, maybe in May or so, I repotted a plant that had like outgrown its container,
Mm,
and I split it up into like three different little containers around my house or whatever. And just like maybe a month ago now, I finally, or a couple weeks, whatever, I finally saw like one little sprout of like a new leaf finally coming out. And it just really made me feel like, first of all, like Mother Earth, like Aya, green thumb, but also just this feeling of like you have to get uncomfortable, right? Sometimes you get like repotted and your environment gets shifted and you're now in this like pool that's bigger than what you are used to, than your little, what's the thing, like a little fish in a small pond, right? You get out of that space, and it doesn't happen right away. I think that's the thing too, is like in our life, we're really used to now this like immediate gratification of things where we like
mm,
purchase something and it's at your doorstep by 2 o'clock that day, right? But this feeling of like, okay, you now are going into this new land of uncharted territory. And it might take months of like consistently like watering that seed and showing up and like whatever before you get a result of any kind. And I think
mm,
sometimes people are like, you can quit on yourself too early, right? So it's just like,
mm,
if you're consistent and if you're like a little bit delusional of like this thing will happen for me, like there's no doubt that it will happen for you.
mm-hmm. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And in the spirit of teacher student, is there any question you have for me?
Oh, yes. So in this feeling of repotting and in
Mm.
this like spirit of like the year of the snake and everything shedding, and because you are my go-to resource on all things grief, I would love to ask you like you know, there's been some changes in my life where I've like felt like within a month I'm like, oh, I'm over that thing, and then a year later I find myself crying over the thing that happened a year ago, right?
Mm.
So or the thing that was lost a year ago or whatever. So I'd love to ask you like in that, like what is your advice for managing those days where the grief of what you thought you had been over comes flooding back, and like how do you work through it?
By feeling it,
Mm,
by letting it come to the surface. I think I am in my own, sometimes people refer to it as regrief.
mm,
And I'm actually in more of a phase right now of a whole new layer of grief that I knew existed, but I wasn't ready to tap into yet in my relationship with my dad and another personal thing that I'm dealing with right now. And even when it's re-grief, it's just like a whole new layer and it can be endless. There's new moments every day. And when you're missing a person or a thing or an aspect of yourself, it's so normal to be nostalgic or feel sad. And how can we, that you even shared it when we did the grief training, the idea of holding both the joy and the
Mm.
gratitude and the gratitude and grief together at the same time. If we hold too much of one, makes
Yeah.
us essentially toxic positivity. If we hold too much of the other, we become bitter and angry. And it's a prescription that I think a lot of people resist, myself included, my own medicine, but you just have to feel it and use it, whether it's through a lot of times for me, it's through moving my body. And
Mm.
sometimes that looks like my favorite hit class, the class.
Yeah.
Sometimes that looks like going to teach. I had something happen this week and I was shattered and crying, but there was no, I had class, I had to teach in 2 hours, and there was no doubt in my mind that I was not going to go teach it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best thing you can do is hold that balance of the grief and the gratitude. Like, I am still here. I get to do these things. I get to go teach. I get to go offer up part of my heart or connect with someone,
Mm.
or I get to take the night to myself and take a bath
Yeah.
and, number one, eat chocolate. That's my rule. But I think the denial of grief is something we've become too accustomed to, and the
Mm.
turning it off and putting it on the back burner. And sometimes we have to do that. But if you have the space to be with it and feel it, I've never let myself cry and not felt better after.
Yeah.
Doesn't entirely move the thing, right? I'm dealing with that this week. Every time I cry, a little, just even 1% more moves and moves and moves. And I feel less sad or heartbroken or upset than I did
Mm.
the day before. It's an annoying prescription,
Yeah.
but it's equal parts the grief and the gratitude, that the how can I
Mm.
let myself feel it and how can I be grateful that I still can feel it?
Yeah.
And what do I need in this moment? Not what my ego says I need, not what society says I need. What do I really, really need? And it's a little cheesy, but grief for a person, a past life, a relationship, a way of being is just all the love that has like no place to go. So
Mhm.
I think feeling it is the only prescription.
Yeah, I love that. It has me thinking of you're familiar with this card deck that I love, the Wisdom of the Oracle card deck. There's
Mm,
a card that says chop wood, and I pull it all
yeah.
the time,
All
I
the
feel like.
time.
And it's just like the meaning is just like do what's in front of you. Do today's work today and like move your body or like move like go and be
Yeah.
in your community with your people or go show up for your job and show up for the thing that you signed up for. And I really resonate with that of just like the best way to get unstuck is to move.
Yeah. And I think some people, men, rebel against my feeling forward way of living. And I promise you, my brain is going nonstop. I'm thinking, 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 thinking. But I just, not every thought is a fact and not every feeling is a fact. But in order to get
Mm.
out of the feeling, you need to move it, whether that's through talking, writing, moving your body, doing something creative, cooking, cleaning. Like, how many
Mhm.
times do we feel anxious about something and we clean our whole apartment and
Mhm.
some of the anxiety goes away. It doesn't have to be complicated, but the feeling needs to move. The more it
Yeah.
stays stuck in the body, the louder it gets. We take it out on other people. We eat it away. We
Mm.
doom scroll it away. So it's, how do you move it? How can you move it?
Yeah. I love it.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Any other gems, knowledge, tidbits you want to share with the listeners before you go?
I mean, it's really just making me. I know I said I'm not going to take any more courses, but I really want to learn some feng shui after this because I do feel this
I see
cleaning
it.
piece that you just brought up, like really like physical space, like clearing it and letting the chi run through the home.
I think you
I,
got one more career in you as an
yeah, I think I
interior
got one
designer.
more.
And not
So,
just any interior designer, like it could be for wellness spaces, Lindsay.
yeah, no,
You can marry
stay tuned, folks. We're just on.
the ultimate
That's,
manifesting generator. Follow her
yeah,
bliss.
come check it out in a few years. You're never set. You can always get a new career, reinvent yourself. It's corny, but it's like Vera Wang didn't create her first wedding dress until she was 40, right?
Morgan Freeman didn't
Yeah,
book his first big acting job till he was 53. That's why we think he's been that age forever, and he has.
yeah,
But I don't know. I'm about to be 37, and I'm just getting started.
yeah. We're fresh. We're
We're
babies. We're
fresh.
young.
We're babies. We're young.
We're young.
And not just because of the filters. I love you.
I
I'm
love you so much.
Thank you for being such a good, amazing, wonderful friend and teacher, collaborator. I'm so grateful that everyone, myself included, got to learn from you today, and you so freely share your gifts. It's really inspiring for me, and I know it'll be inspiring for the listeners too.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. It's like you're a good one. It's on my blog. I have a whole blog post about how you've changed me as a friend, and you're just really a wonderful person, and such a pleasure to get to know you and learn from you and be in your orbit. So thank you.
I love you. Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Breathe In, Scream Out with my special guest, bestie, inspiration in many ways, Lindsay Monal. Lindsay offers in-person classes both in New Jersey and New York City. She has her bowl club that's available to anyone, anywhere, as long as you have an internet connection. She offers trainings, workshops. She has residencies as well. All of her information is in the show notes. If you've never taken a class with Lindsay, I cannot recommend it enough. The last time I took one of her sound classes at Official Ritual, I was on the moon, quite literally. I was not on the planet Earth. I ascended. Our other bestie, Aaliyah, can confirm. I looked like I just came down from a different planet at the end of class. And even more than that, Lindsay is just such a light in so many ways. So I hope you find a way to work with her and experience her magic. And as always, thank you for listening. I can't wait to breathe in and scream out with you again.